Welcome, Dr. Sam Peck College of Business graduate students, to another deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really crucial, that connection point between technology and business strategy. We're drawing our insights from Chapter 14 of, well, what I consider an essential textbook, Management Information Systems, the 17th edition by Loudon and Loudon. Now, this deep dive is really designed specifically for you. Maybe you're prepping for a big meeting, or just trying to get up to speed in the field, or maybe you're just really curious about how to make technology, actually work for an organization. We want to arm you with the knowledge to make smarter strategic decisions about these information systems.
Absolutely. We'll be looking at how you build a really rock-solid business case for new systems and why project management is just so critical. We'll also get into the inherent risks in these kinds of projects and maybe most importantly, how you manage those risks effectively, to ensure success. These concepts are, frankly, vital for anyone looking to excel where technology meets business.
Okay, get ready to unpack some key ideas and gain some practical insights. And hey, as always, if you find this valuable, please do like, subscribe, follow, share it, maybe leave us a comment. Your engagement really helps us bring more of these deep dives to you. All right, let's unpack this first big idea. We've all seen it, right? Shiny new tech projects that promise the moon, but, well, don't deliver much. Loudon and Loudon point out something interesting. Designing and building the IS project is one thing, a challenge, sure. But the really tough part, managing it. Making sure the company gets the benefits it expected, and ensuring the system actually solves problems instead of, creating a whole new set of them.
That's exactly right. You have to think about it just like you'd analyze, say, a new piece of manufacturing equipment or a new product line. An information system's impact needs rigorous evaluation. It's not just about the upfront cost, the sticker price. It's about understanding the overall business benefit and, critically, what your customers will actually gain from it.
Okay, but here's where I think it gets really interesting, especially for you folks heading into leadership roles. It's not always just about the dollars and cents, is it? The immediate ROI.
Oh, absolutely not. While some benefits are tangible, you can put a number on them, cost savings, maybe increased revenue. But many of the crucial benefits are, well, intangible. Things like better customer satisfaction, or maybe a stronger brand image, or even just faster, smarter decision-making because your teams finally have the data they need. It's harder to quantify, but potentially much more valuable.
So how do you even begin to make a case that includes those fuzzier benefits?
Well, the textbook outlines several methods. Let's start with the information systems plan. This is fundamental. So many companies fall into this, what Loudon and Loudon call a vicious circle. They buy hardware, then software to run on it, then realize, oops, the hardware isn't enough, so they buy more hardware.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Yes.
Just reacting.
Exactly. It's reactive, often chaotic, and very expensive. A good IS plan isn't just a tech shopping list, it's strategic. It integrates hardware, software, and importantly, personnel needs. And it must align with the overall business plan. It needs buy-in from all levels.
Okay, so it's about proactive strategy, not reactive spending. That makes sense. But what if you have, 5 potential projects on the table? How do you choose?
That's where portfolio analysis comes in handy. Think of figure 14.2 in your text, a system portfolio. This method helps you rate different projects more objectively. You look at their potential benefits versus their risks. You're kind of mapping them out. You want to prioritize the high-benefit, low-risk ones, obviously, and maybe steer clear of the high-risk, low-benefit ones.
Like a financial portfolio, but for IT projects.
Precisely. It ensures your IT investments actually align with business strategy. It helps coordinate things much better across the organization.
And for getting into the nitty-gritty of comparing options.
Then you might use scoring models. These add a quantitative layer. You compare alternatives based on specific criteria, costs, strategic factors, whatever you define as important. They assign weights and scores. It's really valuable not just for making the decision, but for forcing a conversation among managers about what really matters strategically.
Okay, I get the models. But back to those intangibles. How do you actually factor something like happier customers into a budget decision for a system that might cost millions?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, sometimes literally. It's about distinguishing tangible and intangible benefits. The book gives a good example. A bank implements online banking. Let's say it costs $500,000, but maybe it only saves $250,000 in direct costs, like reduced teller time.
So on paper, it looks like a bad deal initially.
Right. But what about the intangible benefits? Maybe improved customer convenience, higher loyalty, keeping up with competitors. That could be worth, say, $1 million in long-term value. Suddenly, the whole picture changes. Table 14.3 in the text gives more examples. The key is to quantify what you can and build a strong narrative for the strategic value of what you can't easily quantify.
Makes sense. But surely there are standard financial tools for this, capital budgeting and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Capital budgeting for information systems uses those traditional financial models. You've got the payback method, how fast you get your money back. There's the accounting rate of return on investment, ROI, which gives you an idea of the income earned relative to the investment. Then net present value, NPV, is super important because it accounts for the time value of money. What's that future cash flow worth today? And finally, the internal rate of return, IRR, which tells you the project's effective rate of return.
Okay, so lots of models.
Lots of models. And the key insight for you as future managers isn't just memorizing formulas. It's understanding that each model gives you a different perspective. No single one tells the whole story. You need to use them together critically.
So if these financial models are standard practice, what are their weaknesses? Where do they fall short, especially with fast-moving tech?
That's a really sharp question because they do have limitations. Think about how quickly hardware costs change, right? They plummet. And new tech can make a system feel outdated almost as soon as it's rolled out. How do you build that pace of change into a static financial projection? It's really difficult.
Right. The model might look good today, but be totally off in 18 months.
Exactly. And here's something else often missed, especially with network-based systems, Metcalfe's law. Basically, the value of a network grows exponentially as you add more users. So the initial cost might be high, but the marginal cost of adding each new user can be tiny while the value explodes. That's network economics.
So the ROI might look slow at first, but then take off dramatically?
Potentially, yes. And traditional models might not capture that exponential growth well. And crucially, you absolutely have to consider the total cost of ownership, TCO. The textbook rightly points out that the personnel costs, training, support, maintenance staff are very often underestimated, or sometimes just completely overlooked.
So the initial purchase price is just the tip of the iceberg.
Definitely. You need the full picture to know if you're truly gaining or losing. So the bottom line here, you need a solid management structure, a clear IS plan linked to business goals. Tools like portfolio analysis and scoring models help choose the right projects, but you absolutely need that comprehensive evaluation, tangible, intangible, and the full TCO to really understand the impact.
Okay, we've laid out how to make the decision to invest. But here's the kicker you mentioned earlier. Even with a great plan, so many projects seem to, well, crash and burn. Why is that? Why do so many information system projects just fail to deliver what they promised? Is it always bad tech, bad interfaces, flawed processes?
Well, those things can contribute, sure. But the statistics that Lawton and Lawton highlight are, frankly, startling. Get this. Half of private sector projects are underestimated in budget and time required.
Half. Wow.
Yeah. And a large chunk deliver systems missing key functionalities they promised. Only about 32%, less than a third of tech investments are actually completed on time, on budget, and with all the promised features.
That's not a great track record.
It's pretty dismal. And maybe the most telling stat, over half of businesses reported experiencing an IT project failure in the previous year.
Okay, those numbers are sobering.
Yeah.
So if it's not always the tech itself, what is the main culprit behind these runaway projects, as the book calls them?
It really boils down to two words, project management, or rather, the lack of effective project management. Figure 14.4 in your text paints a pretty stark picture of the consequences.
So what needs to be managed? What are the core things you have to get right to avoid becoming another statistic?
Every single project, doesn't matter if it's small or a massive enterprise-wide thing, it involves 5 critical variables. You have to manage these effectively, using the right tools and techniques. First is scope. What exactly is the project supposed to deliver? And just as important, what is it not supposed to deliver? Scope creep is a notorious project killer.
Okay, scope. Got it.
Second, time. Setting realistic deadlines for every part of the project, not just wishful thinking. Third, cost, which is basically, the time involved multiplied by the cost of people working on it, plus other resources.
Time, cost, scope, the classic triangle, right?
Sort of, but there's more. Fourth is quality. Does the project actually improve how the organization performs? Does it lead to better decisions, or is it just there? And fifth, critically, is risk. Identifying potential problems, technical glitches, user resistance, budget overruns, anything that could derail the project, and having a plan to address them.
Scope, time, cost, quality, risk.
Yeah. Those 5. The big takeaway for you as future business leaders is crystal clear. The success rate for IS projects is frankly poor, and the main reason is inadequate project management, especially around these 5 variables. If you drop the ball on any one of them, you're asking for trouble.
Okay, we flagged risk as one of those 5 key variables. Let's dig into that a bit more. What are the specific dimensions of project risk we really need to watch out for?
Right. Every project has risk. You can't wish it away, you have to manage it. The text identifies 3 main dimensions where risk tends to concentrate. First up is simply project size. Bigger projects are just inherently riskier.
Makes intuitive sense. More moving parts.
Exactly. More technical complexity, usually more users and different groups involved, a bigger potential impact on existing business processes. All that adds up to higher risk. Second is project structure. Risk really climbs when the product requirements are fuzzy or keep changing. If users can't agree on what the system should do, or if their demands are constantly shifting, that introduces a lot of instability and risk. Clarity and stability in requirements are key.
So nailing down the what early on is crucial.
Absolutely. And the third dimension is experience with technology. If your project team or even your core IS staff hasn't worked with the specific hardware, software, or tools before, well, that's a red flag. Lack of experience almost guarantees technical hurdles and likely means the implementation will take longer than planned. You don't want your team learning critical new tech entirely on the fly during a high-stakes project.
Listening to this, it sounds like a huge chunk of managing these risks isn't just about the technology. It's about managing, well, people and change. It reminds me of trying to get my family to switch to a new streaming service. The tech was simple, but getting everyone to actually use it and abandon the old one.
Yeah.
That was the hard part. Is that kind of what we're talking about here on a bigger scale?
That's a fantastic analogy, and you've hit on something absolutely vital: change management. This is often the most underestimated part of any IS implementation. Putting in the hardware and software, that's just step 1. The real work is becoming a change agent. You have to actively manage the people and the processes affected by the new system. You need to convince users that this new system isn't a threat, but something that will actually improve their work, make their lives easier, or help the company succeed. And if jobs are changing significantly, you have to communicate that clearly, honestly, and early.
So involving the actual users seems pretty critical then.
Oh, it's non-negotiable for success. The role of end users is huge. You need to get them involved right from the start, all the way through. Make them feel like they have a stake in it, like they own the system, rather than having it forced upon them. That familiarity should build acceptance, not resistance. Table 14.4 in the textbook talks about the user-designer communications gap. That divide between the tech folks and the business users. It's real.
The techies versus the non-techies.
Exactly. And bridging that gap is a core management task. If you don't have enough communication, enough back and forth, you end up with design flaws, user frustration, and ultimately poor implementation. More communication is always better here.
And it's not just the folks on the ground floor, right? What about getting buy-in from the top if the executives aren't fully behind it?
It's an uphill battle, absolutely. Managing support and commitment right from the C-suite down is paramount. Think about it. If top managers seem skeptical or unsure, why would anyone else embrace the change? Strong leadership support sends a powerful message. It also ensures the project gets the funding and resources it needs. It helps smooth over bumps when work habits need to change, and it facilitates those necessary organizational adjustments. Plus, keeping managers informed helps overcome their own potential fears about the change.
Okay, so change management is key. What about those really big disruptive changes like business process reengineering, BPR, or rolling out huge enterprise systems, or even mergers and acquisitions? The change management challenges there must be massive.
They are enormous, and the stakes are incredibly high. The text drops a bombshell statistic. Something like 70% of all BPR projects fail to deliver the benefits they promised.
70%, that's staggering.
It is. And a huge reason is that the people-related changes are managed poorly. You're dealing with deep-seated fear and anxiety about job security. You face resistance, sometimes from key managers protecting their turf. You have to manage changes in job functions, career paths, massive retraining efforts. It's incredibly complex. Your roommate or moving in analogy. It applies perfectly. Even small adjustments require adaptation. These huge projects require navigating a sea of change. And for mergers and acquisitions, managers absolutely must have realistic expectations about integration costs, the actual benefits they'll see, which existing systems are problematic and need investment, and what IT infrastructure upgrades and organizational shifts are required. Ignoring the IT and change management aspects in M&A is a recipe for disaster. The core message here is inescapable. Any new system forces organizational change, period. How well you manage that human side of change will make or break the project.
All right, so we know the risks are there, and we know change management is vital. Once we've identified those risks, how do we actually manage them day to day?
Yeah.
What are the practical tools and strategies?
Okay, good question. The first step, always, is that identification. Understand the nature and the level of risk for your specific project. Then you deploy the right tools and approaches, for instance, managing technical complexity. If your project involves cutting-edge tech your team isn't familiar with, you need to address that head-on. That means ensuring your project leaders and key team members have the necessary technical expertise if they don't have it internally. You need to get it, maybe through consultants or specialized training, before you get too deep into the project.
Makes sense. Don't try to wing it on the complex tech stuff. What about tools for just keeping things on track?
That's where formal planning and control tools are essential. We're talking about things like PERT and Gantt charts, often managed with software these days. A Gantt chart, like in Figure 14.5, is basically a visual timeline. It shows tasks as bars, mapping out start dates, end dates, who's responsible, what resources are needed, gives you a really good snapshot of the schedule.
Okay, I've seen those, like a project roadmap.
Pretty much. And then PERT charts, program evaluation and review technique, like in Figure 14.6, they focus more on the interdependencies between tasks. They show you which tasks have to be finished before others can even start. This helps identify the critical path, the sequence of tasks that determines the project's total duration. Super important for managing deadlines.
Right, so those tools help with the time and scope variables we talked about. But back to the people side. How do we practically increase user involvement and tackle that resistance we know is coming?
Yes. Increasing user involvement and overcoming user resistance. This is where the rubber meets the road in change management. We really can't stress this enough.
Right.
Involve users early, involve them often, keep them involved throughout the entire process. This isn't just about being nice. It actively guards against what the book calls counter-implementation. That's basically sabotage, even if it's not malicious users dragging their feet, finding workarounds, not adopting the system properly because it doesn't meet their real needs.
So how do you get them on board?
Several strategies. Active user participation in design and testing is key. Provide thorough education and training, not just how to use the system, but why it's beneficial. Sometimes clear management edicts are needed to signal seriousness, but use those judiciously. Offering better incentives for cooperation can help. Critically, improving the end-user interface makes a huge difference. If the system is clunky and hard to use, people will resist. Make it intuitive. And here's a subtle but powerful one. Try to solve existing organizational problems before you introduce the new system. Don't layer new tech onto broken processes. Fix the processes first, if possible. This all ties into designing for the organization. You need to ask, what will this new system really do for us? An organizational impact analysis helps answer that. It looks at how the system will change structures, attitudes, decision-making, day-to-day operations. It becomes a communication tool itself. We also need to think about ergonomics, how humans and machines interact effectively, and socio-technical design, which means deliberately designing the technology and the social organizational aspects together, not in isolation.
So it's about fitting the system to the organization, not forcing the organization to fit a rigid system.
Exactly. The case study about Sutter Woodworking's ERP implementation in the interactive session highlights this. They paid attention to the human and organizational factors, and it paid off.
Okay, that's a lot to manage. Are there software tools specifically designed to help managers juggle all this, especially if they have multiple projects going on?
Oh, absolutely. Project management software tools are indispensable today. They automated a lot of the tracking and charting, defining tasks, assigning resources, tracking progress against deadlines, generating those Gantt and PERT charts we mentioned. The software handles much of that grunt work. A huge benefit is they show you the ripple effects. If one task gets delayed, you can immediately see how it impacts everything else downstream. It allows for much quicker, more informed adjustments.
And for managing a whole slate of projects.
Right. For organizations juggling multiple initiatives, there's project portfolio management software. This gives executives a higher level view. It helps track project proposals against budgets and available resources, manage dependencies between different projects, and ultimately helps leadership decide on the optimal mix and sequencing of projects to best meet strategic goals. The example of AirUp moving their project management to the cloud shows this well, using technology to ensure they were working on the right IT projects in the right way. So if we boil down, the keys to successful implementation really are deep user involvement, unwavering management support, proactive risk control, and designing the project with the entire organization, people, processes, structure in mind from day one.
This has been incredibly insightful. Before we wrap up, let's quickly circle back to our audience, the Dr. Sampak College of Business graduate students listening. How does understanding all this directly benefit their future careers?
That's a great connection to make. Look, the knowledge we've covered today, everything from building a compelling business case to understanding project risks and change management, is directly applicable to roles many of you might step into. Think about even an entry-level position like an IT project management assistant, or being a business analyst on a tech project, or even just a manager whose department is getting a new system. These skills are becoming essential everywhere. Being able to help plan, budget, oversee IT projects, understand the pitfalls, ask the right questions, that's invaluable. This chapter provides a really solid foundation for that kind of career growth. It gives you a definite edge.
Fantastic. What a deep dive this has been. We've really unpacked why managing these IS projects is so much more than just the tech build. We explored how to make a solid business case, faced the somewhat scary realities of project failure rates, pinpointed those key risk factors, and crucially discussed practical strategies to actually manage those risks.
Yeah, hopefully you now have a much clearer framework for thinking about how to make sure technology investments deliver real, tangible, and intangible value, and how to steer clear of those infamous runaway projects.
All right, for all you Dr. Sampak College of Business graduate students tuning in, here's a question to mull over. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Considering how difficult they are to quantify, why is it still so important for business leaders to champion and pursue the intangible benefits, like improved customer satisfaction or better decision-making when justifying a new information system project? Let us know what you think.
Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of where technology meets business, insights into managing information systems.
And seriously, if you found this deep dive helpful, please do take a second to like, subscribe, follow, maybe share with a colleague or classmate, and leave that comment. Your feedback really does fuel what we do here. Until next time, keep learning and applying those insights.